All right, let's talk about something truly messed up. Corrupt politicians using water, yes, water, to line their pockets. You might think, John, that sounds ludicrous. Who would be evil enough to exploit something as essential as water? Well, buckle up, because tonight we're diving into the murky depths of political greed, where clean water isn't a basic human right, but a juicy opportunity for profit. We've all heard the saying, power corrupts. But what's even more insidious is how corruption can create crises. And nothing screams manufactured crisis louder than intentionally messing with a community's water supply. Think about it. You cut off access to clean water, people panic, they get desperate. And desperate people are sadly easier to manipulate. This isn't some dystopian nightmare, folks. It's happening right now, all over the world. From Flint, Michigan, to developing nations facing manufactured water shortages, the playbook is depressingly familiar. Corrupt officials, hungry for power and profit, see an opportunity in chaos, and they're more than willing to let the tap run dry to get it.
With you tonight on In Focus, News of Africa Channel 405 reporting continues. Now, as we commemorate World Water Day, we turn our focus now to water regulations in the country and how they can be used to encourage private sector investment. The private sector investment is key considering South Africa's aging water infrastructure. In Focus, we hear from the minister today that our dams are full considering the rains that we've been having, but the taps are dry.
So South Africa is in a dire state, and if we don't get private equity and engineers and companies that know what they're doing on board now, we might just see a significant problem in South Africa, especially if our economy that is stagnant and in fact declining. We need this investment and we need water for future economic development.
Yeah. How have we been getting by all these years without private sector investment in water infrastructure?
No, I think, if you look at municipalities, obviously they charge people rates and taxes. We've seen government and treasury allocating significant amounts of money every year. So we've seen that the infrastructure that's been laid some years ago, maybe 2-3 decades ago, slowly but surely being degraded. And unfortunately, we've also seen urbanization. So as communities and housing and estates and cities and towns have been developing, the same infrastructure was not maintained. So we've started seeing now how this infrastructure has been deteriorated to such an extent that it needs to be replaced. It hasn't been maintained over the years. In fact, if you go look at any municipality now whose infrastructure that is, they really budget very low margins to maintain it. I think Treasury says you need to allocate about 8% of your budget for proper maintenance, and there's very few municipalities that even reach 2%. So it is evident that it's bad planning, bad administration, bad management, and we've been very lucky to have water to such an extent. But also, I think, in the cities we've been very fortunate, but our smaller towns have started seeing water shedding and water shortages over the last decade. And not only that, now we're starting to see our cities where the water quality is not up to standard and then where there's significant water interruptions. And you cannot sustain an economy like that. And it's an infringement of human rights. People need access to quality drinking water, and that's our constitutional right
to get it.
And unfortunately.
So how exactly do these political bottom feeders turn water into a weapon? Well, it's not as if they're out there personally snapping pipes like some kind of villain in a low-budget action movie. Instead, it's a far more insidious, systemic form of sabotage. Think neglect, folks, allowing vital infrastructure to crumble, budgets for maintenance slashed, all while those in charge look the other way, maybe even whisper a knowing wink to a private water company executive. Suddenly, what was once a slow leak becomes a burst pipe. A minor inconvenience becomes a full-blown crisis. And who benefits from this manufactured chaos? Certainly not the people forced to drink bottled water, or worse, contaminated water, because their elected officials couldn't be bothered to do their damn jobs. No, this is where the real villains of our story slither in. The private water companies, waiting in the wings like vultures, ready to swoop in and save the day. Here's where the plan starts to stink worse than a week-old puddle of bottled water left in the sun. With the public understandably furious about the water crisis, corrupt politicians get to play the role of the concerned public servant. They wring their hands, shed crocodile tears, and solemnly promise swift action. "We understand your frustration," they'll say, with all the sincerity of a used car salesman hawking a lemon. This situation is unacceptable, and we're exploring all options to address it. And by all options, what they really mean is one option handing over control of your precious water supply to a private corporation who, coincidentally or not, just so happen to be major campaign donors. And just like that, a basic human right, something that should be as universally accessible as air, is transformed into a commodity, to be bought, sold, and most importantly, profited from. But hey, at least the water's running again, right? Who cares if it now costs an arm and a leg to flush your toilet? Section 4. Selling out. The rise of private water monopolies. So, the private water company rides in, not on a white horse, but on a wave of carefully orchestrated chaos. They promise efficiency, they promise innovation, they even promise lower prices. Spoiler alert, they're lying. What they actually deliver is higher prices, decreased water quality, and a whole lot of corporate greed. See, these companies aren't in the business of providing a public service. They're in the business of making money. And what better way to guarantee profits than to have a captive market of thirsty customers with no other option? It's a vicious cycle. Politicians create a crisis, then offer up privatization as the solution, all while raking in campaign contributions and backroom deals. The private companies get a monopoly, jack up prices, and cut corners on quality, and the public gets left high and dry, literally. Section 5. From public servant to private profiteer. Following the money trail. Now, you might be thinking, "John, this all sounds terribly cynical. Surely not every politician is in on this scam." And you know what? You're right. Some are just woefully incompetent, more interested in playing partisan games than actually governing. But for those who are in on the con, the payoff can be substantial. We're talking about lucrative consulting gigs after they leave office, cushy board positions with those same private water companies, and let's not forget those sweet campaign donations that keep the whole corrupt system afloat. It's enough to make you want to reach for a filter, not just for your water, but for your entire government. These officials, elected to serve the public, end up serving themselves, their bank accounts, and the interests of corporations who see nothing wrong with profiting off a basic necessity. Section 6. Turning the tide. Reclaiming our water, reclaiming our power. So, what can we, the thirsty, outraged public, do about this watery mess? Well, for starters, we need to stop treating access to clean water as some kind of partisan issue. This isn't about left or right, it's about right and wrong. We need to demand transparency from our elected officials. We need to know where our water comes from, who controls it, and how much we're being charged for it. And when we see corruption, when we see politicians prioritizing profits over people, we need to vote them out. This isn't just about water. It's about reclaiming our democracy from the grips of corporate greed and political corruption. It's about demanding a system that puts people before profits, a system that recognizes that access to clean water isn't a privilege, it's a right. So stay informed, stay angry, and most importantly, stay thirsty, my friends. Not for their lies and corruption, but for a future where clean water flows freely for everyone.
Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And hey, if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates on South Africa's political drama. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.
The most important person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and agenda of an entire generation to come. Steve Jobs.